Welcome to Swiss Impact with Banerjis. I'm Svetlana.
And I'm Ben.
In Season 2, we will be traveling around the globe, out of Switzerland, and bring amazing leaders from businesses, thought leaders, political leaders, of course investors and experts.
We're working at implementing and realizing all the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, better known as SDGs.
And they are also making profit.
Hello, I am Amina Gharib Fakim, and I'm the 6th President of the Republic of Mauritius.
My name is Parvati, and I'm a musical artist and the founder and CEO of Parvati Foundation.
I'm Michael Lichtenstein. I'm an entrepreneur here in Liechtenstein. I'm running on one side a financial services company.
You know, hundreds of deals a month. We are seeing more things happening in this impact world. And this is because, look, the world is changing.
So join us to discover impact investing ecosystem.
See you every Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Central European Time at Swiss Impact with Banerjis.
See you on Friday. Act with impact.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone. And for our viewers from Far East, good night.
Welcome to Swiss Impact with Banerjis. Again, 1 week has passed. So welcome back. And for those who are new, what are we doing at our show? We are talking to policymakers, experts, academics, investors on the topic of impact investment and, of course, about impactful businesses.
So before we start, I wanted to start with the project that we started to support called Project Joya, to support the invalid and the underprivileged and the poor people in India during these hard COVID times. And presently, a lot of help coming to India is going to major cities, and we are trying to also get the support to the villages and to the rural areas. You can read more about our project on the website Camomile, that is CAMOMILE.ch, and you can search for a project called Project Joya, and you will find this project there. All your help in any form is most welcome.
And I want to thank actually already those who helped. We get a very positive response and people donated. So thank you very much for those who responded. Thanks for your kind action. And of course, we are looking for more help on this topic.
Exactly.
What about our course? So maybe very few words. So as a tradition, for those who are new, I'd like just to say a few words. We organize a course for everyone, which is called Profitable Business with Impact. You just missed it as we did it a couple of weeks back, but please consult our website, camomile.ch, and we will announce new date shortly. It's a course where you can learn about how you can establish a business which is not only profitable, but which creates positive social and environmental impact at the same time. How you can do it successfully, how can you fundraise and find experts in this area of impact investing. So we would like to open the doors for everyone who is a meaning seeker, who is entrepreneur, and share this experience with you guys. So yes. Ben, about the story, almost forgot, but I know you prepared a very cool story.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Today is a very, very good day. This week has been an amazing week. So it's a good news in the sense that, again, a precedent has been set. The citizens of few democratic countries have found a way to enforce positive movement using the codes. What is unique is that one of the organizations where I was involved in very strongly when I was still living in Netherlands is called Milieudefensie. That means environmental defense. And with few other organizations, they filed a case against Shell, which is one of the world's largest petroleum company. The judge of Netherlands decided beginning of this week that Shell has to reduce its carbon emission with 45% compared to that of 2019. And this decision does not only cover Shell in Netherlands, it covers Shell in 70 countries for more than its 1,100 daughter companies.
And this is really amazing. So what makes this case anyway so unique? And please tell us 2 major points which set up this precedence of it.
No, there were 2 points. So one is that it sets a precedence in the way that the European governments, especially under our leader Merkel from Germany, has been asking the multinationals to reduce their emission voluntarily. But the judge mentioned that the voluntary steps are not enough. That's the good point. So it put aside, and Shell also, of course, mentioned that they are not part of they are not a signatory to the Paris Agreement. But the judge looked through it, he ignored it, and he promised, and Shell had promised that they will be carbon neutral by 2050. Judge mentioned still the steps are not enough and they are not aligned to the Paris Agreement. So the mandatory reduction set by the judge.
I see you're really happy.
Exactly. Second point, what happened is that normally when a petroleum company or a major multinational like this is sued against, it is for the damage that they have already caused. For example, oil spill, forest fire, whatever. This is the first time that a judge asks the company to rectify its way or kind of puts down its valuation on the damage which it is going to cause in the future. So the judge considers Shell to be responsible for its CO2 emission, which is having climate change, which is going to create a damage in the future. So
wow. And this is really
amazing.
Enormous precedence. And because now, guys, in every country, people can follow and do the same. So file legal cases against the petroleum companies and corporations. And I think companies like Chevron in US, they should watch out because the US legal system usually gives even harder sentences.
That's very true. That's very true because it's Mark Carney, he's the former governor of the Bank of England. He made I think in the CNN or something, he spoke on this judgment. He said this is really a good precedence. And he said the businesses or companies who are aligning themselves to the Paris Agreement not only will see a rise in profit, create more value for their shareholders, and do something good for the communities, while the companies who are not changing, they will be left behind with massive stranded assets. And this is very visible because this week also 2 directors of ExxonMobil were sent home by their activist shareholders.
Wow, I see you are like a sun shining up on above us.
And that's good news.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, finally, even the judges see that it's very important. Yeah. And we can also add another similar case where finally our judicial system is being used for good purpose. Some young people in UK sued the Prime Minister, the Chancellor and Energy Minister for violating their human rights but not doing enough to follow the Paris Agreement. Same happened in Germany, when their Supreme Court ruled that the country's climate laws is partially unconstitutional and ordered the government to draw up clear emission reductions targets after 2030.
Exactly. And of course, the precedence to using the legal pathway was, of course, once again set in my country.
Netherlands.
Exactly. This happened in the lawsuit, the Agenda case, which many people may not be aware of. This case happened in 2019 when the Dutch Supreme Court ordered the government to cut its greenhouse gas emission by 25% by the end of 2020 compared to the 1990 levels. It's a minimum fair share to tackle climate change.
Yeah, and so it seems like the youth and NGOs are actually fighting for us.
Yeah.
And today we have a guest who can say a lot on this topic. So let's welcome our guest, Dr. Ash Pachauri. Yes, here he is. Hello, Ash. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here with you, and thank you for having me.
Of course. Let me quickly tell about you to our audience, as you have such amazing track record already, even though you are yourself so young?
I think if we talk about him and his background, half of the program will be only about his background.
Absolutely. So I try to keep it short. So for those who don't know or didn't read what's coming today. So Dr. Pachauri has PhD in decision behavior and master's degree in international management, having worked at McKinsey Company before pursuing a career in the social development arena. So before that, you have gained experience in health and management, which emerges from a range of initiatives, including those of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, PATH, UNDP, IPPF, and CDC program intervention in US. It's not all.
And soon maybe he will have to write Bill Foundation and Melinda Foundation.
You are also engaged in information technology for development, education, and geoinformatics. And you are actually a master trainer in behavioral change communications and strategic leadership. You've done more than 20,000 workshops and events. Wow, how is this even possible? You will share with us.
Combined together, I think we will reach maybe, 100?
And activities globally to outreach to youth. So here is the topic, youth, and communities to promote health and sustainable development. It's still not all. You also get
set a coffee.
Yeah, no, because it's important. We need to make understand that it's not just a person here, it's important person here. So you are also the winner of prestigious overseas research scholarship awarded for advanced studies in the UK and recognized for academic achievements. And of course, you've been recognized by the United Nations for your dedication and leadership in the flagship publication of UN called Portraits of Commitment. And last but not least, you are at many advisory boards and boards of worldwide known organizations. So let's stop here and
exactly. So welcome, Ash.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Can you please introduce yourself shortly and tell our audience of the activities?
Whatever I didn't say.
Whatever we missed. Activities of your organization, POP, that is Protect Our Planet Movement, and WSDF, that's the World Sustainable Development Forum.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the kind introduction. That's it's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm delighted to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about the POP movement, where POP stands for Protect Our Planet, and the World Sustainable Development Forum. So these are two organizations that were set up together, that my father and I had set up together. The POP movement in 2016 and the WSDF, or the World Sustainable Development Forum, in 2016-17. And they're sort of sister organizations, because with the POP movement is really focused on a grassroots movement where we are working with young people to take action on issues of climate change. And the important thing is that the thrust of this action is founded on knowledge. That knowledge is the science of climate change. And then there's the sister organization, the flip side of the coin, which is the World Sustainable Development Forum, where we're working with leaders. And I want to say that in our work, and we really see this demonstrated every day of our lives, youth are leaders of today and tomorrow. But in the WSDF, we have leaders from across different spheres. So these are people who are policymakers, heads of states and governments, business leaders from media, academia, science, that come together and not only just debate about issues that are relevant to the Sustainable Development Goals, in particular, the issues that are pertinent to exactly what you were talking about, which is the Paris Agreement and climate action, but also focus on that action. So we come up with what we call, sort of decisions that emerge out of meetings, for example, that we have together at the WSDF that have very actionable points. And then we follow through with the action. And this is something that is talked about, debated, and deliberated upon by the leaders who come together. But I want to say that the two organizations work very, very closely together. And actually, we have a very large contingent of youth that are typically part of the WSDF on a regular basis. So, for example, we had the WSDF in 2020, and we had about 1,300 youth out of a total of about 2,200 people that were together for about 3 days, 2.5, 3 days. And so the idea is really to be able to get youth to be very actively engaged in this.
That sounds great, Ash. Thanks a lot. And I also actually wanted to quickly talk about your father, because he's also amazing person. And so his name is late Dr. Rajendra Kumar Pachauri. I hope I pronounced it correct. And he was the chairman of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, from 2002 to 2015. And amazing is that under his leadership, the IPCC was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007 and delivered the fifth assessment report, the scientific foundation of the Paris Agreement itself. So how was it actually to grow up with such father who, being a scientist, was loved by many and who also was hated by many politicians and lobby of petroleum industry?
Yeah, well, I have to say that it was amazing. Yes, you're right. My father, was very, very dedicated to his work, and actually he was working literally till his last days. And I think that's exactly what he would have wanted to. We grew up in a house. My father was a person who had so many interesting facets to his personality. Apart from his incredible love for science and very great love for advocacy on the issues he was so vocal about. And you're right, his work, which he was so vocal about, he was not always loved by everybody for, because he was up against a lot of very strong forces which clearly did not appreciate his pushing the science, creating the dialogue, creating awareness, promoting education, and also very importantly, sort of bringing forth the science as a very credible area for people to be able to gain an understanding of the issue, but also to substantiate the issue, which he was very, very he was very clear was an issue that would definitely be defining for our futures. And so he was very committed to his work, but he was a person who was a lot of fun. I probably have spent more time laughing with my dad than I have with anybody else. He had a tremendous sense of humor. He could make a great joke of things that you wouldn't even imagine could be joked about, but he would have something very bitty to say about everything. And he was somebody who loved music. So I associate a lot of music, especially as a child. I remember he would wake us up on weekends. At that time, I didn't appreciate the music very much. He would wake us up in the morning very early to make us listen to music, which we didn't want to hear. Definitely not while we were in deep sleep, but he would wake us up to make us listen to it. He was also a person who was very fond of sports. He was hyperactive. So, we did a lot of things together, and I still remember, family holidays and drives and listening to music, and he'd make us laugh. And he was also a prankster. So he did a lot of things that would, I don't know whether we should talk about them now, but he was a real prankster. So he would, we've got so many stories of things that Dad did, which I don't know anybody else did at all. But so that was one whole sort of dimension of our lives. And when I was growing up, I do remember my dad doing a lot of work, and he was busy at work, but he'd always put away his work when he came home. I never saw him sort of carrying his work back or worrying about his work when he came home. But at the same time, I had the pleasure and the privilege of working with my father. So, we spent many occasions traveling on work, discussing work. We set up the pop movement in WSDF together from scratch. And so I also had the good fortune of sort of interacting with my dad as a colleague, and he was an amazing colleague. I mean, I always felt he was somebody who would guide me, but at the same time, he never really made decisions for me. He was an enabler. So it was quite something. But I have to say that at the same time, yes, I did witness a lot of attacks on him, and and a great deal of pushback. And in fact, there were desks that were set up in Washington D.C. by lobbyists, which I believe he often told me there was a desk called the Pachauri desk, and they did yes, they had they had as many people almost as there were IPCC scientists working around the clock to discredit the science and to basically to mute his voice. And there is an ongoing, but in the period when, because he was sort of a big whistleblower for this issue, at that time it was at its height, I think. And
but then, Ash, how do you feel that that slowly worldwide so many cases and events are happening which prove that actually your father was correct? How does it feel now?
Yes, I think that there's been a lot of advocacy on this issue. We know that today there's a great deal of awareness around the science of climate change. The work of the IPCC, which is extremely solid and credible, is well known. And it's definitely something I think that is very gratifying to know that, this, at least while we still do have people who challenge the science, really, if you look at the number of people today, the science is quite well accepted. And, I definitely feel very grateful. And I know at the start of the show that, you and Ben actually articulated some very, very important recent events, which are indicative of the fact that, there are different stakeholders across, various spheres, not to mention, of course, media. But I think media has a very important role to play. The work that you're doing has such an important role to play. And, your advocacy, for example, through this platform and many others I know you lead, are solid, and extremely credible and important. And this has made a big difference. So it's a combination of things, but it's definitely a huge stride forward, and we still have lots to do. But much ground has been covered, and it's an important point in history for multiple reasons. One is, of course, because there's greater awareness about this issue. We have greater sensitivity in terms of the number of stakeholders, this action being taken. But also, it's important because we still have a window of opportunity, and that window of opportunity, though small, and maybe sort of closing if we rapidly don't take action.
It's a big window of opportunity here.
No, it's closing. Today I read, because we were talking about 7 or 8 years. Today or yesterday was a report that in 3 years we have breached the Paris Agreement. It's not the end of this decade. By 2025, the Paris Agreement is breached. The way we are going.
In this sense, because I was thinking, it all, you mean the whole industry, impact investing.
She's the positive one.
That's great. I think we need to be positive. I know we need to be practical and real, but we have to be positive. And I think that is what has really created a lot of the movement we're seeing today. And I love that, because yes, and the two of you are incredible, because you balance that out and bring out the ultimate truth. And I think that is that we do have a window of opportunity and we need to act. And I think that's what makes today so important for us. And I think we have a number of actors ready and working.
No, I was thinking, have you read the book Hitchhiker's Guide Through the Galaxy? where
No,
there's
I haven't.
the god
Yeah.
of rain. He's a truck driver living in England, and wherever
Uh-huh.
he goes, he doesn't understand why there's a cloud above his head and raining all the time. And I sometimes feel like that. You see the gloomy cloud above my head, and then Svetlana comes with this bright sunshine.
That's fantastic. I love that.
I was just thinking, don't you feel frustrated that despite of your father's warning since so many decades,
Yeah.
one of our previous guests from UNDP, she mentioned that not one single CO2 emitter, I mean the big emitters, including each and every EU member, has a serious plan in place to achieve the Paris Agreement. We are all talking about it, but none of our democratic leaders have the audacity to come forward and really take the hard and necessary decisions to make the changes and make the difference. So what is your opinion on it, and how are the youths with whom you are working taking it?
That is such a great point, and thank you for bringing it up, because yes, the science has existed. We've known that this issue is there, and we're still at a point where there are people who are still debating it, and we definitely don't have the commitments that are necessary. And like you said, we have a very short window of opportunity. So for us, we are going to need to really work with global leadership, and we are not seeing that coming forth in the way that is necessary. And I think that you brought up a really important point, because I know when my dad was at the IPCC, when in his mind he came up with this very important idea for the pop movement, because he felt very, very strongly that the hope really lies with the youth, apart from the fact that it is the future of the young people that is at stake. It is also very important that we mobilize the 1.8 billion youth of the world to take action, to amplify their voices, to demand action, and do the kinds of things that are absolutely necessary, like you said, of industry, of amplifying voices and pushing back on lobbies, demanding action of our governments. And also, very importantly, we do, at least for the youth that are of voting age, it's very important that we be aware and are able to vote in governments that we know will deliver. And therefore, it's also very important to understand that our votes do count. And that's actually where the whole genesis of the pop movement came into being. Having said that, I think it's really important that we understand that while action by youth is really important, we need to have action on the part of multiple stakeholders. Young people will have an important role to play in terms of certainly propelling, and we are seeing that there are movements around the world today where youth are leading action. But it's going to take all of us coming together, like the famous saying that goes, if you want to go alone, you'll go fast, but if you want to go far, you really need to go together. And I think that is really important.
Yeah.
We are not going to be able to do this unless we do this together. And the kinds of things that we're seeing in terms of legislative action, in terms of policy action, regulatory action, that is being driven by youth, is exactly what we need. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we vote in governments that are committed and will deliver, because you can't systemically push the entire responsibility upon individual action either. We have to have systemic change, and we have to have action at the systemic level. So the one thing with the pop movement that I think is really important to share is that while it is a youth movement and the idea is to mobilize the 1.8 billion youth of the world, we are working very closely with on intergenerational action. So we're working with people from across every sphere. We have people who are from governments, we have people who are from businesses, from UN bodies, from academia, from even parents and families. And I think that this is really what we want to do. But we know that young people, for example, who are educated in schools about issues of, it could be the plastic crisis, or it could be the issue of air pollution or whatever, even waste and waste management, they'll demand action of their teachers, and they'll demand action of their schools, and then they'll demand action of their parents, and then their neighbors and their friends' parents. And this is how, we expect that people will ultimately be mobilized, and that the youth have a central role to play for sure.
Ash, from 1.8 billions which you want to mobilize, how many did you mobilize already?
Yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely. We started 5 years ago, and we were born on Earth Day in 2016. And since then, we are now working with over 2.5 million directly, but through the many millions, we then are working with many more millions. And I should say that, we are working in over 95 countries today. We have over 300 partners, and these partners range from schools and universities to networks to businesses to institutions of all kinds, and governments also. And we have a long way to go. But what I want to say is that we do have tools in our hands today, such as social media. And of course, we know that we live we also work in places that are media dark, and don't have are not connected by the digital technology that brings some of us together. And so what we also have is we have young people in places, for example, in Africa, and this is just one example, but also in Latin America and such in Asia, that then work using peer-to-peer mobilization models on the ground in more rural areas that may not be connected by media and so on. And what we really do is focus on creating the leadership and action driven by those youth, then that create more inspiration. One of our tagline is youth inspired by knowledge. And so we use the science of climate change as the fundamental basis to then create capacities of young people, who then go out and create capacities of more young people. And now we're working with a number of people in areas that actually don't even have any connectivity. But we've got a lot of youth that are driving action on the ground, including in places like the Chiapas in Mexico, which used to be the biodiverse lung of the planet, but sadly has been completely desecrated by business and industry, and actually has been seriously intoxicated with the poisonous sort of industry that's there as well. But so we're working with indigenous communities in Latin America and Asia and Africa and many other youth, in over 95 countries.
Wow, that's amazing. Really, congratulations.
I just had a comment on this.
Yes, please.
You mentioned very strongly that you advise your youth to vote. But isn't there a feeling of disenchantment that in a lot of governments, especially, I can speak only on behalf of the democratic governments, that the youth, they vote, for example, I read the reports in US that most of the young Republicans, they want the government to pay more, invest more into alternative energy, renewable energy, while in fact the representatives of the Republic government, they are completely opposite. Listen to Ted Cruz, Trump and all these kind of creatures. Sorry, people. But on other hand, even in Europe, we are having the same issue. People, like in Germany, people are very strongly, especially the young generation, are very, very strongly for the environment. But the German government is still going on with coal industry, petroleum industry, pipeline, everything. So don't you feel a kind of disenchantment?
Yeah, that's such a fantastic point. I love what you said, Ben. The thing is that you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, we are living in a world where we're seeing a lot of populist governments. We're seeing a lot of people who are sort of still actively protecting, the industry focused on fossil fuels and such. And at the same time, we have a movement of youth that are working toward protecting our planet. And so there is a dissonance there, but it's really important because, this is actually something that I want to just reflect a little bit on history. We have had moments in history in the past as well when things have come to a breaking point. If you think of like freedom, the freedom fight, fight for fundamental human rights, the anti-slavery movements, things have come to a breaking point, and we have typically seen that people in situations of adversity have gotten up and taken action. The rest of the time we get into this very sort of movement of inertia, where the same old is absolutely fine, and we really don't want the change. But when it comes to a point where it's boiling, like what's called a tipping point, that's when we see that people get up and demand change. And actually, we're at that point. We're at a point where, yes, we do have a lot to push back on, which you rightly alluded to. But at the same time, we have forces from the ground that are willing to do that. And yes, we do want young people to amplify their voices and to be very strong about what they're advocating and their messaging. And not all of the young people, having said that we work with, are of voting age. Some of them are, some of them aren't, but many are not. So it is important that we do focus on the science. We do create a space where we educate people, and it may sound very surprising, but a lot of people don't really know much, even though I know we've had access to science for some time. And there is, like you said, Svetlana, the fourth assessment report, the fifth assessment report, and credible science to guide us. We still have people who are not educated and don't understand these issues. So I think that aspect of youth inspired by knowledge, and actually everybody inspired by knowledge, is very important. But we can take action and also spread messages, do what it is within our realm, for those who vote to make the right decisions, and those who can't vote to do what it is that they can do. And that's really crucial. But I just want to say that, it's been moments like this when the course of history has changed. And a lot of things have come together in this period, where we're at a point where there is a degree of readiness, and we really need to rev it up.
Ash, another question. How actually youth find you? Someone who didn't know about you, how do they find you? And if you want to go to next country, how do you select the country, or do they invite you? So how do you spread around the globe? How does it happen?
He has the name
I
pop
really
movement.
think that's an amazing question. Sorry, Ben.
I said you have the name pop movement. When I heard the name first time, I had a complete different vision.
It was a play on words, and it was actually my dad's idea, but he felt pop movement was ideal. One is it'll stick, the other is that youth will relate to it, and of course the idea is to make it popular too. But it's a great question. One of the fundamental aspects of our work is to really work on a model that we call local, participatory, and owned by people, where we're working. And so that requires a few things. Number one, we don't just go into any new geography and start working. We really want to be able to build partnerships. If you want to talk about sustainability, the important thing is that if everything is dependent upon, say, Ash, or I don't know, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or even 10 other people, it's not going to work. It is not sustainable. We cannot talk about sustainable development and have a model that's not sustainable.
Our show is not sustainable.
Your show is eternal and totally sustainable. And the amazing thing about you is that you are ever evolving. I mean, I just absolutely love that. And you have reached with the world even through just this technology, which is also so powerful. But when we go into a community, I'll give you an example. If you end up going to, say, for example, Nigeria, or you go to Cameroon, or you go to Venezuela, or another place in somewhere else in the world, it's very important to find partners on the ground that we can work with. Because number one, they know the issues better than we'll ever know them. 2, they are the ones who are going to take it forward. 3, it's really faithful to the whole idea of really building capacity, because we build capacities of people as we start to work with them, and we all learn through that process. And of course, they're local and they accept it. They're credible, and they're also more knowledgeable than we'll ever be. So our model is entirely dependent upon partnerships. Number one, we really are who we are based on our partners. We're nothing without our partners. Number two, the important thing is when I say participatory, typically, for example, if you're in India, for example, the issue in India is a very diverse country. But if you're in India and you are in New Delhi, or you're in, let's say, West Bengal, or you're in Bihar or somewhere else, the issues vary. The challenges vary, the opportunities vary. And similarly, when you go to another country, there's a whole new set of factors that come into play. So it's very important to actually have the voices of the people one is working with in the process of developing a program. So when we have a participatory program, we really go in and try and understand from the point of view of the communities what the issues are and what the possible solutions are. And those solutions then come from them. We don't impose ideas. Yes, we do look at the science of climate change, and we do found our work on that credible science, but the rest of it is really in terms of approaches and models and plans are driven by the people on the ground. And then that way they own it. So these are some of the important things. How do we end up going, and how do they find us? Well, word of mouth is a big one. A lot of people, talk to other people, and then we get connected with other people because of that. Certainly, sometimes we end up meeting people through partnerships, or youth through other partnerships. And so those connections are made and the networks are strengthened. Sometimes people find us on social media. We do have the benefit of the social media tools these days. So a lot of that is driven on online platforms, and so we get connected there as well. But having said that, I want to say that we have a flagship event which takes place every year called the Pop Festival, which you know about, and we're really looking forward.
I wanted to ask you about that, of course. Yes, absolutely,
Yes,
absolutely. Please tell us more about Pop Festival.
So there will be lots of
I'm
music.
very excited to share
artists.
that. First, pardon me?
There will be a lot of music and musicians and
Is
pop
Britney
artists.
Spears coming?
Britney Spears.
Britney
No,
Spears, yes.
she's our age. I
Yes,
think the
we're waiting.
youth don't know her.
That's hilarious. We're really excited to have you at the Pop Festival, and the reason I genuinely mean this is because your work has a very great significance from the point of view of a lot of young people that we're working with, and you'll be surprised, even a lot of people from very remote indigenous communities that have tremendous amounts of entrepreneurial skills and initiative and technologies that they've developed on their own through experience, not necessarily formal engineering training and such. But they are at the point where they need the appropriate input in order to be able to develop that further, to be able to scale it up, for example, take it out and make the difference. Otherwise, it's a great opportunity and it's lost. And like they say, these things come not back, and one of them is a missed opportunity. So, I really feel this connection is a very powerful one, and very excited to have you, both of you, Ben, Svetlana, at the festival. And I know we were going to meet different time zones, so we'll have more than one session with you, which we're very blessed and grateful for. And what I want to say about the festival is that, the reason we call it a festival is because we want to focus on, like Svetlana does, the optimism, the hope, the celebration. And it is something to celebrate, coming together.
Bye for now.
So we are going to rock at Pop Festival. That's how does that sound?
We're removing that cloud of rain that's over your head that follows you around and replacing it with some sunshine. Yeah. So the idea really is to bring young people together and create the intra and intergenerational dialogue, sharing, networking, celebrating together with youth and communities and stakeholders from across the world over the course of the 1 week during which this festival will take place, which is June 5th through to the 10th. And the ultimate sort of idea is, and you're right, we integrate culture very, very closely with our work, because we must understand that communication is a critical part of our work, and communication is entirely sort of founded in culture. So music and dance and art and all kinds of things, and of course a lot of academic, intellectual and advocacy related activities. And so what we'll do over the course of those 5 days is we'll have workshops, which we're looking forward to together with you. And there are other workshops as well. We'll have sessions which are focused on health, on energy, renewable energy, technology, AI. We'll have sessions that are focused on indigenous issues that geographically are of emphasis. We have different geographies covered on different days. So we have Africa and the Middle East, and then we have Asia and the Pacific, and then we have the US, and we have Latin America and the Caribbean. And so
everything is online, as just said, we understand.
It is. I thank you for bringing that up, Svetlana. It is entirely given the pandemic situation. Having said that, we've had previous festivals which have been in person, and they're extremely powerful. But the last year and this year are definitely virtual and in its entirety.
Take me off the list. I'm not coming. if Shakira is not coming, I'm not coming. I thought she would be there.
Waka waka hey, no?
Yeah,
Impact, hey.
Yes, we'll have to make some arrangements, Ben. I'm gonna keep you posted.
I had a complete wrong impression. Sorry. So my another question is that, this Friday school strike started, which was started by Greta and followed by many schools around the world. But unfortunately, even in advanced countries like Switzerland, the knowledge of the participation by the school authorities, school system is very, very little. They don't encourage it. In fact, they try to work against it. Kids are not allowed to participate. But also, there's hardly anything visible or invisible being done by the school authorities. Only thing that seems to matter, at least here, is economy. So what is your experience on this, about this school strike initiated by Greta?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question. I just want to say that, with the Greta phenomena, there are a few things that came together. One is, I just want to say that, we've had historically a number of young people who've done a lot, much more, in fact, than, say, school strikes. But the timing of it was such that people were ready to sort of join in a movement when it happened. So I think the timing was critical. The other is that we have access to social media in a way that we didn't before, and it plays a very critical role in creating the impetus for movements. And so that's been another important aspect of it. And then finally, having young people at the forefront is certainly something that is extremely appealing and is able to draw attention more than ever before. The Greta phenomena really started, and she was inspired by the Parkland protests, which took place in the US when the shooting took place in school, and a lot of the kids, sort of mobilized, and they mobilized very quickly to push back on the NRA and gun, on the whole sort of gun debate. So, so the timing in a way was right. Now, having said that, there are a couple of things I'd like to say. One is that, we need to, I think this advocacy has been amazing. What we need is another level of work, which is that we need to get young people to take action, which means that we all need to pick up initiative and take initiative and do things in our schools. For example, I'll just give you an example. There's a school in Germany that's done a lot in terms of implementing initiative within the school system to reduce its carbon footprint, to limit its use of energy in a way that they've transitioned to renewable energy. They've reduced their paper usage dramatically. They brought their teachers on board in this process. They made systemic changes within their school, and then they have taken it out to the city. So much so that they mobilized many young people within the city and the municipality, but also mobilized the government. So the government now wants to do things together with young people to reduce its carbon emissions. And this is what we need to amplify. It's really, really important that we start doing these kinds of things at scale. And that is what's going to make the difference, because, these things will not last. We're not able to, like you said, schools are not going to encourage it. Kids, we know today there are so many kids that are actually not even in school, frankly. and the pandemic has not helped much. But also, it's difficult to sustain this, and this is not going to by itself create the kind of change. However, yes, we need to mobilize youth and to get them to demand change of governments, which the Greta Thunberg movement has been very, very successful in doing and continues to do. But I would say that in order to be able to really make change that's palpable, that we can measure and have effects in reducing our carbon emissions, transitioning to renewable energy, eliminating and tackling the plastic pandemic, which we know is a very big one. And fossil fuel industries are very happy to sort of redirect their energy toward plastics because there's a move toward electric vehicles and renewable energy. So fossil fuel industry is very happy to be totally invested in plastic. But we need to create awareness about this, and we need to get people to start taking action. And
how do we get them to take an action?
Pardon me?
How
Say that
do
again?
we get the people to take an action?
Yeah, well, all of us have a role to play, and things that we do make a difference, and therefore creating that education. I'll give you examples of some of the things that people are doing. So we have a young person from Ghana who has actually closed down a coal fire, but he closed it down before it opened, a coal-fired power plant before it opened, and he mobilized the youth of his city and his country to educate them first, and then to raise their voice about it, then to debate and tackle this issue with policymakers in a very sort of powerful but effective manner. So that's one example of policy level change. We have young people, for example, in schools, and these are people who are like ages 11 to 14, 15, who are doing 2-3 things. They are, one, they have advocated very strongly with their schools to implement clubs that help to eliminate plastic pollution and create education among youth about the plastic issue and the plastic pandemic, and also protect our ocean as a consequence. So how are they doing that? Some of them have come up with prototypes of technology that are being now tested to eliminate, to help clear plastic from cities and also from border bodies. We have other young people that are more focused on research on issues of how air pollution and other forms of pollution are affecting human health. And they are conducting research on this issue and also trying to come up with technologies that will make a difference to eliminate, or at least tackle to some extent, the extent possible, the whole issue of air pollution, which is a very big, one of the biggest killers today, declared by WHO. Yeah. So this is one more. We have another group that's actually working to make a difference in the homes of communities by implementing what they call eco-technologies. These eco-technologies are technologies that are implemented in homes to no cost of the household. But what they do is that they help in switching over to solar power and also generate compost from the waste that's produced at home. And then what they do is they have linkages with the market, and the market then pays them for the compost, and it makes a difference to organic farming. So there are those that are sort of making changes, at community level. And then we have a lot of young people, for example, at the PUB Germany team I was telling you about, who have made a difference in their school systems, who have educated their teachers, and these are just a few examples.
But whatever you're saying right now is just incredible. It seems like young people did or doing much more than the adults do.
Yes. Yes.
Now I feel insulted.
So a question to you, because I'm sure the pop movement also needs some support. So what type of support you need for our audience? Maybe there are some investors or experts. What type of support would you need in order to leapfrog and make it really to 1.8 billion?
Yeah, I would, sort of send out a plea to those who are listening. Really, we are entirely committed to make a difference. We need to reach the 1.8 billion youth of the world. We need to create more intra and intergenerational collaboration. And what we need now is scale. And this will require investment in order to be able to outreach to the partners, to be able to support. We are providing small micro grants to youth to be able to mobilize, and they're doing it literally at no cost. But for us to be able to create the impact that is necessary and the change that we are compelled and is imperative in the time frame that we have, which is short, very small, it's going to be critical that we do this. It's a now or never situation.
Yep.
So we would really reach out and say, this is the story of common good, and we pray that people will be willing to support us in this process, because there is a momentum, and that momentum needs to be built up now. And that will allow us.
How much do you need? I thought it's not without finance, not without investments that we can move folks around and create such enormous impact. So do you know a number, like to have an idea approximately? What are we talking about here?
Absolutely. Our goal is to raise $1 billion. And this will help us a great deal in being able to reach the 1.8 billion youth of the world. And I want to say in this, there's a lot of snowballing. So when we talk about mobilizing the 1.8 billion youth of the world, there are households, homes, communities, schools, teachers, and governments that are being mobilized, and businesses too in the process. So our goal is to be able to mobilize the $1 billion mark, and we'd like to do that this year. That is our goal, in order to be able to really scale up the effort. There's many more examples that I can share, but I do want to say that our website is thepopmovement.org, and we have a fairly detailed listing of projects and details of a lot of the work that we're doing with youth around the world, and also a listing of all our partners.
Can you say it again? So popmovement.org.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, for those who think, 1 billion, is he crazy? I mean, if you want to mobilize 1.8 billion of youth, it's less than $1. It's 0.56 cents per person. So it's nothing, guys. Come on. So it's really not a big deal. For those billionaires watching us, connect with Ish.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You got yourself a supporter.
Thank you. I mean, this is absolutely invaluable, and you're right. It's a minuscule cost on a per head basis, and the distance it'll travel is between where we are now and a safe, secure, and sustainable future for all. And I want to just say that the one thing that I think has hopefully opened the eyes of many, maybe all, which is my hope, around the world, that we've been taught by the pandemic, is that we are truly an interconnected world. And it's what is called the tragedy of the commons. It started with a gentleman by the name of Garrett Hardin, who is a biologist, who noticed a phenomena in Northern Africa where there was a gated community where the grass looked beautiful. It was trimmed and it was gorgeous. And then on the outside, there was an absolute mess. And actually, there was nothing but a fence cutting between the two. And the whole idea was that this was private and the rest of it is public. And he called it the tragedy of the commons, which is that when it's not owned, or there's no particular owner that you can sort of pick on, it doesn't get taken care of, it gets taken advantage of. And that is true of our water, that is true of our oceans, that is true of the air that we breathe. And it's called the tragedy of the commons. We have to, based on what the Brundtland Commission said as far as the Sustainable Development Goals, is that we must leave the planet at least as healthy as we find it, and not worse off for generations to come. And really, our future, and it's not something we're talking about some light years ahead, our future and our present, but also the future of generations to come, is dependent upon what we do now. And so we should leave the planet livable, healthy, sustainable, and safe. And we know from COVID that if one part of the world is hurting, every other part of the world is hurting. And I'm sorry to say, but unless we do things at this point and urgently, we're going to be, COVID is going to look pale in comparison to the upheaval that's in store if we surpass the 1.5 degree mark. So it's very, very important that we do this and we do this together. And like I said, together we'll go far.
Exactly. I completely agree, because that's all what the scientists are also saying. But unfortunately, the scientists are not the decision makers.
Yes.
That's the problem. Yeah. I had a question that we have been talking about this topic since a long time, since we started our TV, last 10 years. You grew up in a family of one of the world's foremost and first environmentalists. So when my father was teaching me how to drive a car sitting on his lap, your father must have been teaching you how to cycle. So can you please share some personal experience at home? How was it?
Sure. My father, yes, he is, like I said, we grew up in a home where there were a few values. Working hard and working hard with integrity was something that was, it was a non-negotiable, and we grew up with that. But one thing my dad told me, like you were saying, even in terms of learning how to cycle, he says, when I remember, I had this dream. In fact, it's funny that you mentioned cycle, because as a kid, I had this real passion for cycling. And I remember I would watch people cycling when I was a little kid, and I would always sort of dream that I would be on a cycle one day. And when I asked my dad for a cycle, I remember he told me, he says, you can have a cycle, but you must be committed and persevere. Don't sort of use it for one day and then give it up. If you're really determined to do this, then keep with your commitment to pursue it. And he said that about everything, from choosing a subject to study, to playing the guitar, to cycling, to picking a sport. The one thing he felt, and I grew up sort of learning from my dad, that he was very, very vocal about, in terms of a message to us. One was working hard and also playing hard. He always told us that must work hard, play hard. The other was that we need to do it with integrity. And the third is that we have to persevere, and commitment is going to be everything. And he was really, honestly, and I don't say it because he was my dad, but I saw it. I saw it every day of my life growing up. He was a living example. He was truly a living example. He lived by his values, and so there was little getting away. We were brought up in a house where we saw this. We received messages vocally and through action every day, and I feel truly blessed. Yeah, I feel blessed, and I always hear my dad speak to me. If I ever waver a little bit on something, I always hear him say to me that you've got to persevere. And he'd always say, just never give up, just never give up. And he did that himself. He believed in it strongly, and he taught us this, that giving up is not something that. And the only other thing that he taught me as a kid, and I'll never forget it, and he said it to me once, when I probably didn't even quite understand what it meant, was it's one for all and all for one. And he felt very strongly, he had very strong family values. And he said that the family will always stick together. And this he said to me once when I was a kid. And he actually had a very strong belief in a famous Sanskrit saying and sort of quote, which is Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which basically means that the global family, the universe, is one family. And he believed in it, and he embraced people from every space and place, and he treated people like his family.
Wow.
Did he meet Trump?
No, he didn't. He didn't meet Trump, and I don't think he was waiting to either.
Thank you for sharing, Ash, with us. It's really amazing. It's why can't all people be like that?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because I truly believe that one person can make enormous impact, and there are so many examples, you know, in various industries, and yeah, I mean, if everyone would
look at
yeah.
your father. Your father influenced you, and you influenced already 1.2 million people. So it's
1. Yeah.
So it is already kind of snowball, and this is where it all starts. You plant the idea.
I think that you said an important thing. I think, and my dad did believe in this. We need to move beyond ourselves. It cannot be about oneself. It has to be about the collective. It has to be about common good. And we are not going to be able to do this unless we do it with everyone. And in this inbuilt is the whole issue of equity. And, being able to do this with a spirit of justice as well. And we cannot be focused on self-interest in this process. It really means embracing everyone. And I think that, if you're right, Sweta, if all of us were able to do this, the world would be another place altogether. And I hope that, your movement and I hope that, we're going to be able to multiply this and let it snowball. And I just, I feel really grateful that I met you. And that, we've been able to come together as a family, as one unit. And the pop movement is as much yours as it is anybody else's. And I know you'll touch the 1.8 billion youth of the world, and make the difference, because those are tools and know-how that you have. And I think those connections will transform lives, and then those lives will transform many more.
Ash, are you still here with us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, so one of the persons I met and I had a talk, this was like quite some time back, this was like 4 years ago at UNFCC, was Abigail Disney. And I really admire her because she really says what she thinks and she says it out loud. And 2 years ago, she said, in my opinion, which hit the nail, when she said to her own age group, sit the FFF down and let the kids drive. So what do you think of this statement, considering especially today's, if you look at the world leaders of the great economies, Merkel, President Biden, Putin, Xi, Trump, everybody's 65 plus. So don't you think that it's very frustrated? And even in modern democracies, the youth are underrepresented in the political decision-making process? Is your organization doing something about this?
Yeah, this is a key point, and this is one of the things that we found, that youth have been tokenistically involved. You go into these meetings and they say that we want the voice of youth. There'll be one young person who may or may not be very young anymore, who'll be sitting in some corner, who'll be asked to say something that is post deliberations and decisions. And I totally agree with you. We need more youth involved. And yes, what are we doing about it? Actually, the interesting thing is that this connection between the World Sustainable Development Forum and the pop movement has been amazing, because we have connected, and we have something called leadership conversations, where we come together with leaders of the world who are actually decision makers, where we talk to them and seek their guidance, but also become involved in programs, not only programs that they are implementing, but also programs that they wish to implement where youth can take lead. And these leadership conversations happen actually quite frequently. We sometimes have more than 4 in a month. So there's sometimes more than 1 a week. But the idea is to come together with global leaders from across different spheres, where youth can play an active part. And actually, the discussion takes place with a group of young people in real time. And then we also stream it to YouTube, where many more young people can pick up a conversation later and share comments and remarks. But the idea is to strengthen these networks and also get young people to start playing a role. So we've been doing that extensively also with leaders from the United Nations. And we've been doing this with heads of states and governments. We've been doing it together with academia. We also have, and you'll be quite impressed, a lot of young people who are now actively involved in writing, not only for policy advocacy, but also for media, and for academic publication. And this is a very important space for youth to get their voices out, because otherwise we have voices which are that have been there for a long time, and it's more of the same kind of thing. We don't have new thinking, we don't have new concepts, we don't have new theories, and we don't have new ideas coming forward. And in fact, we have started bringing in young people from all kinds of places where and we're connecting them with these opportunities to write, where they're able to share their voices, which go into mainstream, where global leaders and also academics are now listening to youth. We need to do much more of this, but I just want to say that there are these changes taking place, and we're lucky that we have people who are recognizing it, including here, and as you said, with Abigail. But we need more opportunities for this, and we are seeing this happen. Even very recently, with a Latin America Caribbean meeting which the United Nations held, it was entirely moderated by youth. We had young people from the pop movement speak. They talked about their experiences, and they're intending to do more follow-up on this. And this was probably my first experience where I saw youth from start to end, even in terms of taking up communication via email. So, this is good, because agendas need to be formulated also with the engagement of youth. It cannot be just that, a tokenistic voice. We need ideas to come in, and we're dependent on new ideas. We can't do same old, like Einstein said, we can't solve the problems with the same thinking that created them in the first place.
Exactly.
So,
I also mention that all the time.
Yeah.
I just remember the word you said, Latin America, and I think you still did not get Shakira.
He's still stuck with Shakira. Waka waka.
I know what I need to do right after this meeting now. I'll have to be sending Ben a WhatsApp message soon after some news.
Ash, we know that your father was very much involved in climate change. You also, but do you also looking at other issues like biodiversity loss, social inequality, injustice, and marine life? So if yes, what youth is doing about it? And maybe you can provide also some concrete examples on these topics.
Absolutely. Actually, these are areas that we're very, very focused on. So to give you some very concrete examples, we launched a program called the Pop Ocean Initiative, which is focused on biodiversity, specifically within the marine realm of marine life. And we've been mobilizing youth. We have now over close to 100 countries, of young people from close to 100 countries that just in the last 1 year have taken up projects to protect the oceans and the marine diversity, reduce, protect the coral, reduce plastic pollution, create awareness about the impact of plastic pollution on human and marine biodiversity and life, and also at the same time educate masses and clean up beaches and other even land bodies, because we know that all the plastic that we find in the oceans ultimately goes from land and goes into water streams and then carries on from there. So just to give you an example, that's one, the Pop Ocean Initiative, which by the way now has been accredited by the United Nations. We are also working on what we call a WSDF Blue, which is like a WSDF forum meeting, which will be focused on issues all blue. And biodiversity relevant to particularly marine life. We have another program that's called Waves of Change, which is underway as we speak, where we have young people from across literally everywhere in the world that are participating in a program where they're being trained by experts on Sundays, by experts, and we have a common friend, in fact, who the MAPS program that spoke to us about marine biodiversity, and particularly the Arctic region, which is extremely vulnerable. And they spoke to us just a couple of Sundays ago. We're working very closely with them now. And also we have other experts from within this field, biodiversity, biologists, experts and scientists, as well as practitioners who are talking to the young people that are participating in Waves of Change, but not with the objective of only one-way dissemination of knowledge, but really with the idea that we mentor them to then take up projects. So it's a 6-month program. By the end of the 6 months, there'd be a significant amount of capacity building, again, youth inspired by knowledge, but also projects that each of these youth would have devised, which we would mentor and then help in implementing. So this would cover pretty much the scape of the globe, because we have young people from around the world, including from landlocked areas. And this is an important thing, because a lot of people think, oh, I don't live by the ocean, so why is this my problem? But you know, we have to understand 3/4 of the Earth's surface.
Switzerland doesn't have oceans. So when you talk about oceans, something, yeah, but we don't have oceans.
Yeah, you're like, okay, so why does this concern me? But it does. And, you know, we also know from experience that if, you know, our marine life and ocean health is adversely affected, which it very much is as a consequence of global temperature increases and ocean acidification. And of course, sea level rise as well, which is further jeopardizing several particularly small island states, but everybody. At the end of the day, affects everyone, because 3/4 of our Earth's surface is ocean, and 50% of the oxygen we breathe comes out of the ocean. So if you don't have a healthy ocean, like they say, no blue, no green. We're not going to have anything if you don't have an ocean. So that's one example. On issues of climate justice, I love what you asked me, because, you know, there's a very famous economist by the name of Kenneth Boulding that actually has talked, and we know that, you know, even Dr. Amartya Sen has talked a great deal about inequity, the issue of poverty. And Kenneth Boulding said, and he said like more than 35 years ago, that 200 years ago, if we looked at the ratio of, you know, the poor versus the rich, or those that are well off, it would be 1 to 5. Today, it's 1 to 50. And this was 35 years ago. I can imagine that it would be way more than 1 to 50 today. So you must understand that the inequities that we're living with will never allow us to be able to make any sustainable progress. And we are not going to be able to achieve the sustainable development goals, which say that we must at least leave the planet as healthy as we found it when it was, you know, when based on sort of that baseline, then where we leave it. So we cannot make progress without carrying forward all communities and all, you know, forms of people from across different spheres, including those that may not be from, you know, very rich communities. So we have to look at the issue of equity. Now, what are we doing about that? There's lots of things we're doing about that. Number one, we've been entirely focused on the issue of climate justice in our work with, for example, indigenous communities that are the ones that have been actually ripped off all of their natural habitat, their means of living, and also there are a number of minority communities. So we have been creating education about this issue, but we have also been integrating very deliberately these communities as mainstream, because at the end of the day, they have to be mainstream. Anybody who's left marginalized will live on the peripheries and will not be integrated in this so-called development. So we have to carry them with us. And so even during the festival and on a fairly regular basis, we have discussions with partners that are focused entirely on global equity issues. They're bringing in communities that don't normally get educated. And we are helping also in giving scholarships to a number of these communities that typically don't get integrated. We bring in young people from across all of these geographies, rural areas, you know, even minority LGBT communities, indigenous communities, to participate, to share their voices, and in particular cover issues of how we can tackle these issues of equity. And so how we're doing this really is by formulating partnerships with groups that are focused also on equity issues, whereby we can create opportunities for these youth to get scholarships, to talk about the work that they're doing, and also mainstream by bringing them together with other communities who typically are easily mainstreamed, but these ones never get integrated. So we're very, very conscious about this, and this is something we work on actively.
And talking about education, I was thinking, because both of us, I mean, you know us, you know it, and we also know it, that our present curriculum or our present education system is not enough to prepare the youth for the future, which is in front of them. So I would like to quote one of my ancestors, but he was the intelligent side of my family, not me. Sri Rabindranath Tagore. He said it in 1913 when he received the Nobel Prize, which I believe is more important today than it was then, when he said the highest education is that which does not merely give us information, but makes our life in harmony with all existence. So do you agree to this? And what is your organization's doing about this?
I totally agree with that, first off. And I do agree that, we have to reestablish the harmony. And that harmony is about love. And it means loving species we share this planet with, which means flora and fauna. On a daily basis, we are losing 150 to 200 species of flora and fauna permanently to extinction. So this is something that we have to understand. And like you said, education is a fundamental premise of this. We need people to be aware of this issue, but we also have to boil our actions down to fundamental values. And this is about love, peace, integration, equity. And we are not going to be able to do it unless we embrace those values and live by those values. And that means that we need to be able to live harmoniously with all forms of life that we are born to share this planet with. And, there is space for everyone. And since we are quoting, I just want to say that, Mahatma Gandhi said, there's enough on earth for everybody's need, but not enough for everybody's greed. And that is that is a very crucial thing. And at the end of the day, if it's going to be all about me, and not the collective, and not looking at the universe as your family, and not looking at the commons, which is, what are we doing to our air? What are we doing to our water? We won't have a future.
I hope people understand that we are not talking about socialism building, but conscious use of resources which we actually have,
Absolutely.
So it's really possible to feed everybody on this planet, to provide education, healthcare, and so on, if we just do it wisely and consciously. Realizing that we are interconnected. Like it's every time on our TV show, one or another guest comes and puts it like, yes, we are all interconnected with nature, with other people. And when you realize that, of course, you want to care about not only about yourself and your tummy, but others, people, and environment. It's just an obvious attitude.
And the whole time I was thinking about what am I going to have for dinner today. So, I just want to say that in my personal experience, when I was growing up in India, I mean, I was a kid playing on the street cricket. I was not aware of environment and environmental issues.
Even when I was a kid, I was not aware about environmental issues.
Compared to the youth and the kids of today, they are so much more they are aware of the environment and social issues and everything. So how do you see this evolution of awareness and impact of the youth on environmental debates? And are there visible signs or examples?
Yeah, there are. It's interesting that you mentioned this. We have spent time with young people, I mean, quite young, about 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old. And it's quite intriguing to see that they are conscious, just like you described, Svetlana. They're very conscious, and they're also quite deliberate. They are careful about the use of paper. They inform their parents about switching lights off when they leave the room. We have experienced workshops with young children of that age group that have used art as a means to communicate issues of the environment. And it will be quite interesting to learn that they are aware of the importance of trees. They also understand the issue of water and potential scarcity. Well, it's existing scarcity, but for those who have water, the potential scarcity, and therefore the importance of conserving water. And they are also very conscious of, how they utilize electricity and their energy footprint, their carbon footprint, the importance of walking, turning off engines of cars at traffic signals where they're waiting for a while, turning off the water when they brush their teeth. And it's interesting to see these are kids who may not be able to vocalize a lot of things, but they are able to use other forms and formats such as art to be able to express themselves, and they're very clear in their understanding of it. And I've actually witnessed a lot of these children who will inform their parents of what to do also. They'll ask questions about use of plastic, segregation of waste. And it's quite fascinating because, yes, you're right. A few generations ago, people were not aware of these things. But today, young people and very, very young people are. And I've seen them actually in fairly, sort of persuasive positions with their parents and teachers about this very issue. And I think that therein lies the potential of young people. And actually, some of the younger ones are much, much more honest about it and able to sort of demand without worrying about anything, And
humans can evolve, right? And I call it consciousness shift from the early years, right? So we can evolve, and now before we also were not aware, but now as we are aware, we can help also younger generation to come to the next step. Ash, I have a last question because we are running out of time here for you. So it's about two people that we with Ben admire. One we already mentioned, Greta Thunberg, and the other is Sir David Attenborough. And Sir Attenborough, he mentioned that Greta has actually achieved more in 6 months than he in 6 decades in raising the awareness on climate change, right? And since you are working with the youth, what do you think is the reason for that? And also, maybe, or did you already produce also some similar Gretas in your pop movement?
Yes, I totally agree, and I've had the good fortune of meeting with Sir David Attenborough. He's such an inspiration, and I know he spent time, and I've watched all the shows that he's sort of filmed together with Greta, and I think it's really amazing. I do agree with you that we have seen a certain momentum build up in the last few months and years vis-a-vis decades before. And like I said, there are a number of factors that have come together. I think the world's readiness for a phenomena on this issue and Greta's sort of vocalization and action and advocacy has played a very critical impetus, has been a critical impetus in making it happen. Access to social media and helping to spread the word and help mobilize and create the movement. And then certainly has been the fact that youth have come together and it's a force to reckon with. And so that is really true. You'd be amazed. We have some phenomenal Gretas in our movement. And I've seen them come out of corners of the world we would never expect them. So honestly, I am
That's great. Yes. Amazing.
I wake up to feel like I'm electrified by it, and you will be amazed. And like I was giving you an example that with the smallest amount of support, the kind of mobilization, the movement, the incredible and phenomenal action and leadership that I've seen in the field of climate leadership by some phenomenal Gretas from Africa, from Latin America, from Asia, from the Far East, from the Pacific, and I can literally count them. They are amazing. And if we could just somehow, build it up so that the 1.8 billion youth of the world were to become Greta,
then Ash, really, because we are running out of time, but it's so interesting. We usually ask our guests at the end to say very short call to action to inspire. And in this case, I wanted to ask you maybe to inspire young people which are not yet aware of global challenges or not taking any action. So really short, couple of sentences. What would you say?
I'll tape this for my son, my elder son.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to meeting with him. This would be such an honor. And I want to say, a lot of young people in the world today, in particular, are disheartened. And I know you alluded to that before. That COVID has been a major setback in terms of a lot of motivation and such. What I want to say is that all young people have potential. It's about catalyzing that potential, and everybody really has something to offer, and it's about bringing out the best. And I just want to say that, at the POP movement, we're really focused on bringing the best out, and we have diversity. The important thing is to be able to love and respect that diversity and embrace it. And in that process, what happens is that we find that we have one Greta of one kind, and we have another Greta of another kind, and we have another Greta of another kind. And being able to understand and respect that diversity is important. But when you bring out the best in people is when they're able to be their best. And can you do it? Yes, you can. You definitely can. And like I say, that I pop and I don't stop. And I'm going to tell you to do the same. And we can come together and we can protect our planet and make the difference. And it is about youth being inspired by knowledge. We're in this together. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ash, so much for joining us today. So we see you, I guess, at Pop Festival in a couple of weeks.
We will.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks a lot for joining today.
Thank
you.
And
thank you so much for having me. This has been absolutely inspirational. And I just want to thank you and thank everybody for listening. And I'm looking forward to coming together. We are a global family, and the Pop Festival is our next stop. And like I said, we pop and don't stop. So let's just keep going. Thank you.
Yeah. And Ash, just if you are not yet a member of Chamomile, please register and you will be our honorary member. We will upgrade you so you can use it at full power to impact.
Thank you. And I'm spreading the word. I really appreciate it. I'll see you on Chamomile for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ash. Bye-bye.
So viewers, this is the end of the show today. Next week, we will be having a very, very thought-provoking speaker, Dr. Vibhav Kant Upadhyay, who leads an Indo-Japanese initiative which goes further than the United Nations SDGs. So while UN SDGs, we speak about 17 results, while working on normal economical model, he's talking about changing the economical model. So please be there. And and by the way, it's not anymore an academic exercise. It is being already promoted and implemented in countries like Norway, some states in India, and a couple of states.
Yes. Yeah, time is running out.
And all the SMEs and entrepreneurs, don't forget to keep an eye on our next course on Chamomile. That is CAMOMILECH.
Thanks everyone for watching us. Act with impact.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Welcome to Swiss Impact with Banerjis. I'm Svetlana.
And I'm Ben.
In Season 2, we will be traveling around the globe, out of Switzerland, and bring amazing leaders from businesses, thought leaders, political leaders, of course investors and experts.
We're working at implementing and realizing all the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, better known as SDGs.
And they're also making profit.
Hello, I am Amina Garib Fakim, and I'm the 6th President of the Republic of Mauritius.
My name is Parvati, and I'm a musical artist and the founder and CEO of Parvati Foundation.
I'm I'm an entrepreneur here in Bischofsheim. I'm running on one side a financial services company.
Hundreds of deals a month. We are seeing more things happening in this impact world. And this is because, look, the world is changing.
So join us to discover impact investing ecosystem.
See you every Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Central European Time at Swiss Impact with Banerjis.
See you on Friday. Act with impact.